morning, everyone. The reading for the sermon this morning is taken from the Gospel of Thomas, and this is from the 6th passage in the text. His disciples question him, "Should we fast? How should we pray? How should we give alms? What rules of diet should we follow?" And Jesus said, "Stop lying. Do not do that which is against your love. You are naked before heaven. What you hide will be revealed. Whatever is veiled will be unveiled." Recently, I saw a film that disturbed me deeply. It's a film that's available to be seen now in the theaters. It's called Chappaquiddick. And I believe Chappaquiddick refers to an island close to Martha's Vineyard, where an incident occurred in 1969 in which Senator Ted Kennedy was involved in an accident, and a car went off a small bridge into a creek or into a body of water, and a woman was killed, the woman that he was in the car with. Now, it's very interesting the way the movie is presented, because Ted Kennedy is dead, and so there's a little bit more free rein to actually provide a story that shows the truth, because it's one of those incidences that occurred that was greatly covered up. It was greatly covered up because this man's career was at stake. The movie suggests certain aspects about Ted Kennedy's actions and his state of being and what was going on between him and the woman. It does so in kind of a subtle way, but the message comes through. What's really interesting to watch is how Kennedy decides to deal with the situation in the moment. It's obvious that he's very aware of how this incident is going to affect his career. And for some people, that's just, well, obviously. I mean, you got to do everything you can to fabricate a story, to present it to the media, because if the media found out the truth and the people found out the truth, I mean, the consequences for what actually happened would probably be Kennedy going to prison. And why is that? Because there is a plausible story that, number one, Kennedy was drunk when he was driving. Number two, that it would have been possible to save this woman if he had not been so obsessed with himself. And how do we know that? Well, after I got home from the movie, I Googled Ted Kennedy's speech, because maybe a week after the occurrence of this event, he made a public broadcast. And this was back in the days, in 1969, where you could pretty much do a broadcast on the three major networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC. You pretty much, if it was a big enough story, all three networks would simultaneously, they would forego their regular programming, and they would show this one thing, some presidential speech sometimes, or some breaking news. And they show us right before, and he has a friend that's really trying to petition him to do the right thing. And you can hear in his thoughts, and as he's speaking to his friend, that he really has decided that he is going to present the story that the lawyers and the advisors have given to him, so that he can preserve his career. And then I went back and I watched the actual speech, and then of course with YouTube that brings up all sorts of other relevant videos. And one of the videos that I tuned into was the diver. There was a diver that was brought in the day after, when they found the car capsized. The diver went in to recover the body. And this man spoke about some truths that were really disturbing. One of those truths was that based on I guess when what happened was the car went over the bridge and turned over, so it was upside down. And I don't know how it all works, but when that car was in the water, there was a pocket of air inside the car. And it appeared that this diver said when he took the body out that, the woman was trying to breathe in that air. And he was pretty certain, based on the size of the pocket and his experience in these kind of situations, was that it is likely that she could have lived for about 3 hours breathing in that oxygen before ultimately she suffocated because all the oxygen had been used up. And that is a really disturbing piece of news, because in the movie what we do is we recognize that Kennedy goes back to the party where he was, and he pulls a couple of friends aside and he explains to them what happened. And then they go and they actually dive in and see if they can open the car doors, which they can't. But they don't get any help from the authorities. And Kennedy goes back to his hotel and sleeps, and one of his friends recommends that he alerts the authorities right away, and he waits until the next morning. And ultimately it turns out that it was a 9 hour period from the point when the accident happened to when it was presented to the police. And when we hear from the diver that the woman was likely alive for 3 hours, she could have been saved. If they had gone, even when Kennedy went back to his friends and brought them to the car, we were still probably within a couple of hours, that if they had hustled, they could have got paramedics and they probably could have saved this woman. But because of this element of his career and his prominence as a Kennedy, this is 1969, so his brother had been president, John F. Kennedy, assassinated. His other brother, Robert Kennedy, had been assassinated. And he was sort of still being groomed for the possibility of a presidency. And you see him at some point, he calls his father. And his father is in a state where I think he'd had a stroke because he doesn't speak very clearly. And you see him later in the movie. He's in a wheelchair and he's kind of, but he doesn't look like a pleasant man. He looks very nasty, actually. And Kennedy is trying to get some help from his dad, and his dad says one word to him: alibi, and then hangs up the phone. Now Jesus is saying in this passage, stop lying. And all the guidance that Kennedy got following, once this incident becomes revealed, was to lie, basically. Now, of course, people don't come out of the gate saying, well, we got to lie our way through this. They're very crafty and they're very focused on how are we going to present this story so as to give enough truth that people don't think, well, that's a complete crock. But, obviously we can't tell them exactly what happened because, well, first of all, your career's over. Second of all, you're looking at criminal charges. This is very disturbing to me. First of all, we see Kennedy in the movie call the parents of this woman. The parents of this woman is maybe 23, 24, 25, I don't know. And she's a very respected individual in this political circle. She's somebody who works on the behind the scenes on helping people's political campaign. And she's considered very bright and like a rising star or whatever, I don't know what you want to call it. And he calls her to tell, just make up this story about how she's amazing and oh my God, it was a tragic accident and stuff. He doesn't admit, he goes like, I was drunk and we had this flirtatious thing and basically I didn't do anything for 9 hours. He doesn't tell the truth. How do you say that to somebody, right, without feeling utterly ashamed of yourself? But why would Jesus be teaching us to speak truth, to not go against that which is your love, that which is your highest nature? And I was meditating on it further, and I was reminded of the passage in John chapter 3, which I'd like to read to you now. And this is John 3:19. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and the people loved the night rather than the day, because their deeds were evil. For all who do evil hate the light and do not come to the light, so that their deeds may not be exposed. But those who do what is true come to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that their deeds have been done in God. Some people may read that and go, well, that's pretty intense. I mean, their deeds were evil. This movie really highlights a very evil act. That a man escapes responsibility and the consequences of having killed somebody, essentially. Now, it's not a premeditated murder. It would be considered some sort of manslaughter where somebody, because of their negligence, ends up doing something and someone dies, and they're responsible because he was driving drunk, at least as we're led to believe. Why am I sermonizing about this today? Well, the message came to me in my meditation because those of us who walk the mystical path, we strive to bring all our deeds before God. For we know that God is merciful and God will forgive everything. That does not mean that Ted Kennedy falls on his knees and goes, God, by my negligence I murdered somebody, please forgive me, and there's no consequences. There are consequences for deeds that are done, that harm other people. But the difference between not being forgiven and being forgiven is recognizing that you have confessed your error and God has seen your confession and has forgiven you and loves you and cares about you. And now you have to experience the consequence of your action. And on this planet, it seems though people will do absolutely anything to avoid the consequences when the truth of their actions are potentially revealed. And that, to me, when people ask, well, why is the world in such a calamity? Why does God allow it to be? God allows you to lie if you want. God allows you to hire a crack team of lawyers in order to craft a story before other human beings who then decide, is this true or is it not true? I mean, we just witnessed Bill Cosby being put on trial for one incident in which many other women have said that the same thing happened to them. Why do we have to have a trial for this? Why do we have to have two trials for this? We have one person who is saying this is what happened, and we have another person saying, no, this is what happened. Well, somewhere the truth is not being given top priority, right? We are having to debate what actually happened because somebody will not actually own up to the truth. So we have a lot of money wasted, we have a lot of time wasted because somebody is not willing to go, yes, this was my intention, this is what happened, this is what I wanted, and I knew it was wrong, but I made sense of it this way. Now, some of you may know that since I moved to Charleston, I've started to drive for Uber. It's a way to get to know the city, it's a way to make some money, it's a way to meet some people. And I was at the airport after I had finished a ride and I drove to the waiting area, the Uber waiting area in the airport. And there was a guy there, I talked to him once before. He was a nice guy, he's from Antigua, from Barbados. And he's driving for Uber, and we just happened to park next to each other a couple of times in a row. So we started chatting about comparing, well, how much you make an hour, and how much time do you work, and when do you do the best fares, and all that. And he was talking about his irritation about how little people tip, and especially the younger people. And so we talked a little bit about that. Sometimes people give you cash tips. Sometimes, everyone's offered the opportunity to tip after the ride is finished. And he was saying, like, he prefers the cash tips because when they tip through the app, then it's taxable income. Now, right away, that truth meter goes off in me because I'm like, well, all income is subject to tax. Because in my mind, you can't get away with anything. Like Jesus said, anything that is veiled will be unveiled. All truth shall be revealed. But there's a delay here on earth. So I can collect the cash tips. This is a mentality that many people have. I can collect the cash tips, not declare them on my taxes, and for however long, none's the wiser. Well, I said to him in a fun way, I was like, well, from my perspective, you have to karmically be conscious of the fact that you're not being straight up. I didn't say it to him, to you, but it's like one has to be cautious about. I didn't want to make this confrontational. And so he said, well, what if God has given me this cash as a way to say, well, declare your taxes here, but this money is for you to go and buy your dinner. You don't have to worry about taxes. It was a very interesting justification to me. But it really showed me, like, oh, people find a way to justify their choice of actions, which to me are clearly against the truth. And some people say, well, the government uses taxes and it's so corrupt. I mean, why should I give all my money? Why should I declare everything? They're cheating us, so what's the big deal? The big deal is that everybody is responsible for the level of honesty in which they live. So it is no justification that if this person is ripping me off, it's okay for me to rip them off. I mean, you can choose to live that way, but I don't recommend it, because you will have your own karmic repercussions for that. Okay, let's take a step back and go, we are striving to the best of our ability to bring all our deeds before the light. That we are willing to have the consequences of our deeds, given to us, because we want to live in the absolute most present, up-to-date moment. I don't want to be worried about something that I did 2 weeks ago that's going to be coming around on my karma. I mean, I can imagine Kennedy, he knew the truth. He didn't speak the truth. For all his life, he never really declared what happened. And that had to disturb him unless his conscience was completely shut down. But what people do is they distance themselves from their conscience because they can't live with that conflict. But some people can't escape it. It haunts them. It creates a tension inside because their soul longs for the truth, the liberation of that, which is why sometimes you have people that, years after, they show up at the police station and say, I'm the one, I killed these people, or I did these heinous crimes. And there are other people, it's the exact opposite. They just love the fact that they got away with it. Nobody gets away with anything. And if you ever wondered, well, how is it that this innocent man or this innocent teenager got framed for murder and now is going to prison for 25 years for something that they didn't even do? Well, you might be able to make sense of it when you think, well, maybe in the prior life, this person did something and they chose to, hire a crack team of lawyers and really manipulate the media, and then they did what they needed to do, and they got away with it. And then this next life, because for God, to me, my perspective is it's all continuous. That we don't get away with stuff. And I really recommend you not try. But really the message that I want to talk about today is I want you to be aware of this as really, to me, the number one problem that leads to the calamity on the earth. And I know a lot of people want to go, oh, the earth is beautiful, and there's animals, and it's so peaceful. Yeah, of course, there's places you can go that are incredibly peaceful. But amongst the people, there is tremendous conflict. And I don't think all conflict is bad. But when we have a culture, a global culture, that is, I want what I want, and it's right, and I'm going to do everything I need to get it, to a point where if you don't agree with me, I'm going to bomb your country and kill your people. That is a lack of conflict resolution ability. And if we have another aspect of culture, which is, I am not going to tell you what my true intention is. I'm not going to own up to what I actually did or what I actually meant. But I'm going to disguise it, and I'm going to accuse you of being the enemy who is trying to accuse me of something that I didn't do. I'm going to denigrate your reputation so that people no longer think that you have a credible testimony to speak the truth. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of energy and money and manipulation that goes on this earth for the simple reason, as is written in John, that people do not want their deeds exposed because they don't want to experience the consequences of it. What about if we thought ahead about the consequences of our actions, and therefore we didn't walk in those ways? For example, why did Kennedy not go like, man, I'm pretty wasted, I shouldn't drive? Well, maybe the girl was drunk too. Well, with the possibility of him having to call somebody to come and pick them up, or who knows what. But he had enough sense, I guess, if you call it sense, to go, well, I can't risk my reputation, so I'm going to risk killing myself and this woman. I mean, that is just, I mean, it's devastating, because when you think about the parents and the family of this woman, and the fact that she died because somebody made a stupid decision, and stupid decision followed by manipulative decision, by selfish decision, resulted in somebody losing their life in order to preserve their career. I mean, I'm sorry, but it sickens me. It makes me nauseous and saddens me deeply. Okay, well, that's something that I contend with, because to me the truth is like the smooth humming vibration of heaven. And as I've grown up on the path, I have learned to really be aware of the consequences of my words and my actions and even my thoughts. Yeah, it's hard work to discipline yourself, not to live as everybody thinks it's okay to live, to cheat the system, to manipulate a person because you want to have sex with them, to cheat a little bit off your company because, well, whatever, it's a company, or to cheat a little bit off the government because, well, they rip us off too. The final aspect of the sermon I wanted to talk to you about, well, how do you love people who do these things? Well, the concept and the challenge is when people think that loving somebody means being kind and just sort of looking the other way and not confronting them and just doing the kindest thing possible. Well, sometimes that is the expression of love. Other times, we're going to love that person's soul by holding them in the light, because the soul will be released, will be relieved, will be liberated. I mean, even if Ted Kennedy ended up going like, yeah, I was drunk and I was having an affair with this woman and I, decided to spend the night so I could wake up and look fresh and not look drunk and disheveled. I did all those things and it resulted in this woman dying. Therefore, I am responsible for manslaughter or maybe even a form of murder. I don't know. So whatever the consequences are for that, I accept them. Now, his soul would have been at peace in the sense that the truth had been revealed. Now, he may have spent 20 years in jail or however long, stewing on it and really examining how did he get to a place where he allowed that to happen. And maybe that's the best thing that could have happened to him. I don't know. I am not the judge of all people. But I want you to understand that being a person who bears the truth and someone who is a light on the world, who basically creates the opportunity and the atmosphere for truth to be received, sometimes people will flock to you because they can trust you, because you're more interested in the truth than you are about stroking somebody's ego or protecting somebody from their emotional reactions. And other times, they will hate you. And they will find ways to ruin your reputation and gossip about you. But our calling is to love. And Jesus said, don't do that which is against your love. So do not support acts and deeds that you know are against God. Maybe do your best to convey the opportunity to somebody who you recognize is trapped in one of these patterns, that there is a way out, that speaking the truth will liberate them. I remember Mother Claire, who was one of the teachers that I worked with when I was in a prior order. And she talked about how at some point her son was getting kind of into a skinhead mentality. He was starting to take on a little bit of a sympathy for these white supremacist groups. And she said how one time she walked into his room, and because I think he had shaved his head. I don't know all the details, but she said, the moment you hang up one swastika in this house, and the moment I sense that you are out there doing things, I'm the first person to call the cops and you are going to jail for it. She said that to her own son. And I applaud that. I think, first of all, it's an understanding that we're talking soul to soul. It doesn't matter if I'm your mom and you're my son. I'm not going to protect you from the heinous crimes that you are now tempted to do because of some seed of hatred that got under your skin. I'm going to stand up for the truth. And if I see you going against the love of God by hating this person because they're black, or hating this person because they're Jewish, or hating anybody, and wanting to act out that hate, I am the first person to go to the police and turn you in. So let that sit upon your soul. Now that's an extreme situation, but you have a mother who has a responsibility to steer her teenage son. And he could walk out and go like, I'm not going to live here anymore. And you know, I don't know what she would do. And most of the time you're not going to be put in situations where somebody's truth is breaking the law and it's up to you to report it. But I know, for example, therapists, if a therapist thinks that somebody is suicidal, they do have a responsibility to report it to certain government agencies or healthcare agencies. I want you to feel the responsibility of the truth. I want you to learn how to love people even in their deceit. And I want you to be confident in the idea that the truth ultimately liberates the soul. And if somebody has to endure the consequences of their evil deed, then that will be good for their soul. That will be good for the planet, because those consequences teach somebody that what they did was wrong. But you look at Kennedy, and he sort of got away with murder. And he had a failed attempt at the presidency. I don't know how long after. I think it was in 1980 or something like that. And probably, they speculate that the reason he didn't get elected, or he didn't even get the nomination for the Democratic Party, was because he had this situation that created some doubt in the American people. I mean, really, is that the most important thing? I didn't get to be president. I mean, I killed somebody, but let's talk about me being president. Again, it makes me sick, actually. If we want peace on this earth, we need to bring our deeds to the light. And that can be done confessing them to a priest, falling upon your knees, revealing it to God, telling a person that you have harmed or if you manipulated, I did this and I'm really sorry, and being willing to endure the consequences of it. That takes guts and courage. It's a cowardly move to hire attorneys to fabricate a story and to hide and cover up the truth. That to me is the utter cowardice. But people have the option to do that. If you really want to be a contributor to the peace on this earth, we could greatly reduce our legal system if people were willing to step forward and go, this is exactly what happened, this is what I was thinking at the time, this is what my intention was, and yeah, honestly, I knew it was wrong. However, okay, so we're still going to need some lawyers and some judges to help coax out the truth. Okay, well, what exactly, when you say, and the judge can go and ask a few questions, I mean, most of the stuff can be resolved in a couple hours. But all this energy that's put into defending and putting up some kind of a story to obscure the truth is a waste of time and a waste of money. And a lot of people suffer as a result of it, especially those people who can't afford these crafty and manipulative lawyers. And I'm not saying all lawyers are that way, but you talk about people who defend O.J. Simpson or defend Bill Cosby or whatever. Their goal is not for the truth to be revealed. Their goal is to get their high-paying client off of whatever charge so that they can then turn to the next high-paying client and go, now my fee is $1.5 million. So we have to be alert to this. And the solution is every individual willing to own up to the truth and stop hiding their deeds to avoid the consequences of having those deeds revealed.